Brian, for easy nib unit swapping pens, in my case, the TWSBI BAC 700, what's your advice in maintenance, cleaning, or whatnot if you swap the nib units often? And I'm kind of paraphrasing because it's a long question. Does switching the nib units out and leaving them inky, since they're inked in the same color of the pen, will be put back shortly? So basically, if you have different nib units, or it could be like Lamy if you have different nibs, or Pilot Vanishing Point if you have different nib units you're taking out. If you want to keep the same ink inside the pen and you want to just take out and use a different nib unit, what do you do with the other nib unit? It's a good question because, you know, if it's going to be the same ink, you're not changing colors or anything like that. Do you need to clean it out or store? How do you store it or whatever? So if you're going to be sitting down and changing relatively quickly, like within a few minutes, then you don't really need to do anything with it. Just take it off, whatever, write with a new one, swap back and forth, if you're swapping back and forth like that a lot. But if you're going to be taking off a nib unit and setting it aside for an hour or more, I would say, then what's going to happen is the ink is mostly made of water, and the water is going to evaporate out of the nib, and it's going to leave kind of like dried up inky nastiness on your nib. It's not going to flow well, it's not going to write well, it's going to look darker because all the water is going to evaporate, the dye is going to be left behind, it's going to be darker, not going to flow as well. So basically, if you're going to be taking it off and setting it aside, you got to clean it out. Like, that's kind of just how it is. So with something like a TWSBI, like this one, it's pretty easy. You can leave the ink in the pen and you can put your new nib unit on and keep on writing, but you just take a little bulb syringe or something and just kind of like, shoot some water through it. You don't have to super detail clean it out, because if you're going to be putting it back on the same pen with the same ink, you don't have to be like completely retentive about it, but you can just flush it out just so you get most of the ink out of there. Take a little paper towel, soak it to the nib. That way it kind of like gets out most of the stuff, and then you can go on about your day. If you're doing something like a Lamy nib, if you got a Lamy pen and you got a nib that's, let's see here, well, Lamy, or there's like other ones like that. I guess if you have like Edison or something, that's going to be kind of similar to the TWSBI. But if you have Lamy, let me pull a Lamy one, make sure I have a nib on it. Yeah, so with Lamy, they don't have a whole nib unit you're pulling off. You're basically just pulling off the nib itself, which sometimes I can do with just my fingers. Sometimes I need tape. Yeah, it looks like I need tape. Yeah, I've got tape right here. I'll show you real quick how I do the Lamy thing. So a little piece of Scotch tape, boom, right on the surface of the nib. Pulls right off. So yeah, if you're doing the Lamy, what I do is I just have a little water cup, like a little Dixie cup like this. And I'll fill a little bit of water in it and I'll just kind of plop the nib down in there. And that's about all you need. Put that back on here. So if you have just a nib like that, it's pretty easy because you can just, take the nib off. But anything with a nib unit, like TWSBI or Edison, or I'm failing to think of any other ones, but TWSBI has a bunch of different ones that you can swap out. You're basically going to need to clean them out, and I think that answers that. Pilot Vanishing Point, that would be the same kind of thing. You would want to like flush it out. Bulb syringe works really well for that. So I hope that helps you out, Oscar.